There's revelation that God downloaded on me in a season where playing it safe is the riskiest thing we can do in life. And the revelation shift for me was around, hey, I'm not defined by whether this thing is successful
Mhm.
or it fails. I'm defined based off the parable of the talents, 5, 3, and 1. He said, well done, my good and faithful servant. You used what I gave you. So I think when we understand that God doesn't have the heart of, hey, you messed up on something bad, 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 which is kind of the religious take. It's more of, hey, son, I've given you stuff to use and do. Go take risk with it. If you make a mistake, adjust. A
Yeah.
righteous man falls 7 times and gets back up 8.
All right, today's guest is my friend Nate Burkhalter, a 7 times American Ninja Warrior, a speaker, a coach, a husband, and a rad dad to twins. Check out his Instagram, No Limits Nate, or his website, Nate Burkhalter, to learn more. Enjoy this conversation of a man who has shifted his priorities, made his family top of the list, how he's still having impact even in doing that, and where to find the passion, the desire to step out as a man and take risk. And when you find yourself in what may seem as a failure, how to learn and grow from it. You are going to enjoy meeting my friend, Nate. All right, my friends, super pumped to be hanging out with No Limits Nate, 7 times American Ninja Warrior. I had the pleasure of meeting you, Nate, a few weeks ago at the Rise of Kings, Arise conference, and now here we are talking fatherhood. How you feeling today?
Hey, feeling good in my spirit. A little tired as a father right now with some presently sick kids, but overall, it's a great day.
Hey, man. Well, that's what we're here to talk about, dude. It's not always just like the energy is not the same always, right? You got little kids in the house, so I'm stoked to talk about that. All right, Nate. I'm gonna just kind of go through my questions and hit you with my first one. How old do you find yourself today?
Just turned biologically 40, and
Heck yeah.
normally I feel like I'm 10 years younger than my biological age, but the grays are kicking in, the sleep is kicking in, or lack of sleep, so I'm feeling 40 now. It's
Yeah.
a fun
Oh,
transition.
all right, man. So when you when you were 30, right? What were one or two things that were really important to you this last decade? And now as you're 40 looking back, what are like 2 or 3 of the highlights from your 30s?
Yeah, great question. I'd say even moving back 2 decades, I wanted to be a husband and father from
Mm,
my teenage years, and I thought going to college meant I'd find the wife and life would begin thereafter, and then found myself in my 20s single, and then thankfully, I had a real come to Jesus moment in that, gave my life fully to the Lord, and
mm,
and got out of the religion and moved into relationship, and that let me
mhm.
begin to take risks because my identity shifted. So,
Ooh.
as I ended that 20s decade, I had a breakup with the woman that I was really into and thought I could marry, and at the same time, I didn't have peace.
Hmm.
So I continued to pursue the Lord in that, and that led us to a breakup. So as I begin my 30s, I had just ended a relationship, and my company at the time, when I was an engineer, sent me slash told me, voluntold, that I'm going to an assignment in Africa.
Hmm.
So I find myself at 30 years old moving overseas to Africa for what began a year assignment there, then followed up with a year and a half in Norway. So my 30s were filled predominantly with being overseas, working projects, being detached from my community, and then in a whole new way, finding a mix of learning to let God be my father, my guide, my
Mm,
provider, and me not having to do all the things that I had learned to do, even in a good context of helping build the church and plugging into missions. I learned to slow down a bit, spend time with the Holy Spirit, and say, God, I want you to move and work in my life without me trying to control the results. So what I got to watch in the 30s
mm,
was some beautiful experiences where I got unplugged. I had, this picture behind me of Moses on the holy
mm.
ground before the Lord out in his wilderness season, which was hopefully not for us, but for him, 40 years. In that space, God provided me with those places where I got to slow down, experience his
Mm.
presence, and then see some really cool fruit grow from what I had began doing in my 20s. So a lot of the Ninja Warrior TV show athletic journey really culminated in my 30s. And as I wrapped up that decade, just slowing down and being intentional with where God had put me, I found myself not only married, which was a beautiful answer to prayer, but then a surprise honeymoon. We brought home some souvenirs from Italy. found out it was 2 of them, and began the journey of being a husband and a father more or less at the same time. So
Mhm.
now rolling into my 40s, it feels a little bit more like most men's journey in their 30s, where they're
Mm.
beginning and continuing on in husbandry and fatherhood. And now I'm beginning that at 40. So grateful for the experience I had to build the foundation, to do the work in myself, to become the man of God I'm called to be as a husband. Breaking free of porn, of lust,
Mhm.
and the lust battle never ends. But getting the freedom from porn and learning how to build the foundation to be a good husband and father has set me up well. And now entering the game a little late on average, but also grateful and excited to get to now walk in one of the hopes, joys, and promises that I felt from God, even if it was 15 years later than what I had hoped for.
Man, that's so good. I want to come back to one of the things you said, but before I do, if we're sitting here 10 years from now and you're 50, what would you hope to say about your 40s?
Mm, it's a great question. What I learned in my 20s in hindsight is that I was very ambitious. Some of that
Mm.
was good, and some of that was out of a brokenness to be accepted by an ability to achieve. And
Mhm.
as I released control of that and saw just walking with God in my 30s,
Mhm.
I I believe and hope to carry into my 40s a place where I have the capacity to not only be present with the Lord, but then with my children. And instead of moving, grinding, working hard like we're called to do, I want to look back on my 40s and say, man, God did incredible things by multiplying the time that I gave him
Mhm.
instead of all the places where I stepped in the arena to work, to pursue, to build. So I want to look back on this decade and say, man, God did an incredible work in my wife and I, and where
Mm.
we were called to be present, not stretched too thin, and help develop our children. Because I believe those first 8 to 12 years are crucial. The
Yeah.
teenage years, I'm not there, but you more or less laid the foundation. So if you're still building like I have the ability to, I want that time to be deep and intentional with my children while still moving forward in the places where God's called me to operate. And that's what I'll be learning myself, but also seeking wisdom from men like yourself who are forging the path.
Yeah, man, I love that. I um I think so many of us men and fathers really resonate with like even just the wrestle that you just shared, right? Like you made the comment, kind of like walk with God, rest in God, but then you said also like work hard, like we're called to work hard. And so for you, what's the dance, right? In being ambitious but not letting that define you, right? Like you shared a little bit that you made this identity shift. And so it's like I want to wake up and I want to crush the day, but I don't want to put in 20 hours and sacrifice my family. I also don't want to just be like me personally, like, all right, God, just wake me up whenever, God. Okay, it's 10 a.m. Like, what do you want me to do today, God? Like, I also think that that's kind of the extreme on the other end of where I don't want to operate. Like, I'm just going to check the mailbox to see if there's money in it. So for you, where's the balance of waking up, working hard, but not making it about you, I guess? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. I hope that most men ponder that question. I think
Mhm.
some, as we experience in the realms of men's ministry that we get to be involved in, we see many men who have that wake up call in their 50s and 60s, and they realized they just did the grind and they
Right.
built and
Right.
pursued, and then they missed a lot of moments. And I've come across some guys who did the opposite, and they swung to the opposite end of the spectrum, and they were fully present in their family, and yet they didn't build something or steward what they were called to do. So then they
Yeah.
struggled financially. And my dad, he did both in the sense that he was a hard worker, he was a full-time pastor, part-time,
Mm,
and he was present in our life, but we struggled financially. And he
yeah.
wasn't fully emotionally healthy, so there were anger issues and there were other places that disconnect us. So I look back and I could see how he did a good job of being present, and yet it didn't have the impact it needed because he hadn't done some of the emotional work yet.
Mhm.
So as I look at it, I've worked and had the seasons and decade and a half of somewhat of that grind. Now I recognize being a single guy, I can make the most of that. And when I shift, I'm gonna have to reprioritize. And so what
Mhm.
my wife and Emily have done even this year is we've done less, even
Mhm.
though my nature is I want to build something, I want to dive in and grow. I want us to step into marriage ministry. Not so much in a place that we have experience to talk to people from our marriage, but in a place of doing ministry together.
Yeah.
And we got caution from some mentors to say, hey, you should take this 2026 year and pause and continue to seek God on what he's going to guide you into, not add anything new to your plate, and learn the rhythm of what it's like to
Mm,
be married and to begin to steward your kids. So I've had to bridle myself in my natural desire to go out and do and continue to learn that being piece. And then absolutely we're called to, I mean, I just happen to have it here, Colossians 3:23, work willingly at whatever you do as though you're working for the Lord rather than the people. I think 3:17 on the prior page
mm,
is like with all your might
mhm.
as unto the Lord. So I want to continue to step into places where I can give it my full effort. And that's a choice, but there's also connecting to the heart of feeling like I'm on mission. And I don't know the full balance because I've seen the pendulum swing of too much, and
Mhm.
I've rested, and then I've noticed, oh, I've swung too far the other way, and I'm sleeping in a little bit to create space and waiting for the feeling to be there.
Yeah.
And God's continued to remind me the mix of discipline equals freedom. So
Mhm.
stick to the
Yeah.
discipline, and then just have the boundary of what I define success as. Because if
Mm,
it's open ended, I'm going to need to continue to do, and it
mm.
feels like the target always moves. So I've had a lot of this discussion with my wife as we pray and continue to say, God, we don't want to just jump into the next thing. We want to be intentional about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so I'm in this slower season, probably the slowest I've ever had outside of the children and that side of things. And I've just been at peace with God, you're guiding me. I'm going to be faithful with what you have before me. And as you put dreams, thoughts, and ideas in my head for the next season, I'll begin to build out some of those ideas, but I'm also going to wait until I feel clarity and it's time to move.
Yes. That's so good. So something that I wish that I would have had more of a understanding of, like I got married at 21 and like the highest and best in that realm was like to be a youth pastor or to be a pastor. Like I grew up in the church. So it very much felt
Mhm.
like calling and ministry was something out there, right?
Mhm.
And I think in the last 5 years, 10 years, as I've been doing this fatherhood stuff, I realized like my primary calling, if you will, or my primary ministry is my wife and my kids. Like I think the very best thing I could give the world is not if I like take a million fathers through some 90-day program, but if I'm married to Sarah on the day I die and we fought for this like marriage and this thing. And so I would almost say that in this season of like being freshly married to your wife, like that is the all, like it doesn't feel like I'm speaking in front of 1,000 people. It doesn't feel like I just put out a book. It feels like very slow and like, okay, we're watching a show and feeding the 10 months old again, like it feels like a little bit
Mhm.
anticlimactic maybe, but I think that
Yeah.
that foundational time is like when you're 85, it's going to be the thing that you remember the most and probably the only thing that we would say, I wish I didn't travel as much, or I wish I would have had like one more, time bottle feeding my kid or whatever. I think those are the things that you and I will look back on as like the most important ministry we've ever done. But I don't know that enough people are talking about that, right? But I think the best gift we can give our kid, like I got 4 teenage daughters, well, one 20-year-old, but I think the best gift I can give those girls is loving their mom really, really well. Like that's like the best gift I
Yeah.
could give them.
Yeah.
Um,
That's Hey, I'm curious, Ned, when did you become aware of this shift in your life around seeing that you think based on your environment and the religious upbringing that to become impactful and successful, you've got to climb the ladder in the ministry rank, become a youth pastor and then a men's pastor and then a senior pastor or whatever it looks like, or lead a nonprofit. As I grew up in that world, I saw that path because my dad was a preacher and I
mhm,
rebelled against it by saying, I don't want to be poor like that. I don't want to be around all of these hypocrites that are broken in their life, their finances, their marriage, and yet they're climbing this achievement ladder in the ministry. So I ran away from that and went into
mhm,
engineering because I'm like, I don't
mhm,
have to deal with people. I can make money and provide for my family. And then in my ambition, I climbed in that until I had the come to Jesus awareness of, man, I'm just seeking to climb some ladder of achievement. Now, if I had done that inside of ministry, which was very possible, and if I'd done that with a wife alongside or in tow, I would have banged her up and brought a lot of damage into that pursuit in ministry and in my marriage. So thankfully, although I didn't want to start the marriage game this late, thankfully God worked that stuff out in me as a
Yeah.
single man
Yeah.
in industry. And so now as I've stepped into ministry and to marriage, I have more of that awareness that my wife is my primary ministry and so are my
Mm-hmm.
kids. And then when I do that well, even though it feels slow and boring and uneventful in some ways compared to bigger achievements elsewhere, I see the foundational element of God saying, hey, learn to love, serve, and lead your wife and your kids and your home first. And this is why the requirements for deacons and elders are based on,
Yeah.
do you know how to faithfully serve in your home first? And when you get that in order, then you can stack on top of that. So my question in that is as you've learned those things, how did you begin to have that awareness that, oh man, I'm in this ministry space and it can just become like a guy in the world who's building his career. I've noticed I found myself doing that same thing. Where did you have the awareness to continue to operate in those places of impact, but then not seek to sacrifice your wife and kids on the altar of success and growth and achievement for the Lord?
Yeah, for the Lord, exactly. Well, so my primary, like I have a business, I've got employees. I've been building that since I was 20. But I was always a youth pastor as well. And it was when we had our surprise twins. So when I was 26, I had a 3.5-year-old, a 1-year-old, and then surprise, you got twins. And so at that point is when I shifted out of ministry because I don't really know how, but I have this realization that like I'm going to serve somebody else's kids, and not that that's a bad thing, but I'm going to serve somebody else's kids, and I'm begging these youth group kids to come. Like I'm driving around picking kids up. I'm begging their parents, like send them to youth group. I'm like doing all this just to get kids to come to like a Thursday night event, and and they love me, and there was impact there. But when I walk through the door and there's 4 little kids, they're ecstatic to have me. There's no jockeying for their attention. There's no I got to drive and pick them up. There was just this awareness that it's not that being a youth pastor is bad. I think it's good and it's needed. And there was one moment I could think of where a dad came to me and he was like, Ned, I really need you to talk to my daughter, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, bro, I hang out with your daughter for maybe an hour and a half a week. This is your responsibility. Like this is your responsibility. It's not mine. And I think sometime around there, I just had this realization that my kids were my youth group. So it was so hard, dude, because my identity was a youth pastor. It was so that. And I was like, okay, I got to step away from this. And dude, it was like, I grew up in a Pentecostal church. I mean, I remember missing our first Easter Sunday because I decided to stay home with the family because my wife was sick. It hurt, dude. It was so weird and hurt. But I was like about to leave with the healthy kids and leave my wife home with the sick kids. And I'm like, whoa, what am I doing? What am I doing? So like when you make the statement a minute ago of you lost religion and you found relationship, and then here's the key statement you said, which is like freaking money, dude, is it allowed you to then go take risk that you wouldn't have taken before. Like it gives me chills to say, like, I think you should write a book about that or something. Cause we are stuck as Christian men, especially because we think we're being good. We're doing the right things. We're following the rules of religion, and we're not in this like epic relationship with burning bushes and like, battles and life, right? Like exciting life. And that's what us men want is like, God is looking for men who want to partner with him, like Moses and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all these homies who were not perfect, who didn't do religion well, who had a relationship with God. Like, dude, and here's the thing for me, and maybe I love your feedback on this and I'll be quiet, but for a lot of times I thought that God was looking for people he could trust. But as I've seen like Moses and Abraham, and you start to read about these dudes, you're like, these guys weren't like the most trustworthy. The difference was they trusted God. So how are you and I in relationship trusting God so that we can be a part of this bigger story? I don't know. What are your thoughts on my verbal rant?
Dude, I felt either the Holy Spirit goosebumps or the air conditioning kicked on. One, well, that, so let's go back to that part about taking risk.
Please.
For me, and I think this is crucial for men, especially with kids, because you feel like you have to play it safer in a wise way to take care of your family. But the shift for me, I think all of us get faced with this, is before really having an identity shift in who I am as a child of God,
Mhm.
I would only attempt things based on whether I already could foresee success in that. I would only do
Mm.
something if I thought I was going to do it successfully. And I would never take the risk to exert my full effort. And the misogi concept I've heard in, I think it's Japanese culture, that do an event every year that's has enough risk in it that you have a 50-50 shot of failing.
Hmm.
And I learned I was only attempting things in my life, in my career, in athletics, and in my faith, if I could do it with like 60% effort, maybe 75. And because I was capable, maybe above average capable, people thought I was giving my all when I was really playing it safe.
Mhm.
This revelation that God downloaded on me in a season where playing it safe is the riskiest thing we can do in life. Now, as an engineer, my job was to minimize risk for ExxonMobil, one of the largest companies in the world with a huge portfolio. And we were about managing risk. And in life, there's a lot of wisdom in that. So I believe in being a calculated risk taker. And with that said, the life of faith that we're called to lead means that we almost dismiss some of the natural things we experience as humans, and we're looking to eyes above. What does God call us to do? What is he
Mm.
doing? Our Father in heaven, your will be done on earth as it's in heaven. So what did Jesus model? He's looking at his Father, and then he's living it out here. So it means we're taking what the world would deem as unnecessary risk. And the revelation shift for me was around, hey, I'm not defined by whether this thing is successful
Mhm.
or fails. I'm defined based off the parable of the talents, 5, 3, and 1. He said, well done, my good and faithful servant. You used what I gave you. But to the one who sat on it, didn't take risk, he said, you wicked, lazy servant, you didn't understand my heart, and you're going to be punished for that. So I think when we understand that God doesn't have the heart of, hey, you messed up on something bad, 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 which is kind of the religious take. It's more of, hey, son, I've given you stuff to use and do. Go take risk with it. If you make a mistake, adjust. A
Yeah.
righteous man falls 7 times and gets back up 8. So when that revelation happened
Mm.
in my life, first, I learned, you know what? I've been afraid to go all in with God. I've been afraid to express my own heart and feelings towards him where I've been disappointed. I've been afraid of how people will judge me. And when I laid that down and just bared my soul to him and then to others, and to others, it looked like, hey guys, I know I'm this preacher's kid who's one of the leaders, and yet I still struggle with porn last night, not
Mm.
presently last night, but years
Yeah. Yeah,
ago,
yeah.
and being willing to open up and receive the judgment or the freedom, which I didn't know truly existed. So I know we live and preach that in our communities, but the way it translated for me was I was playing it safe in my career. Engineering was the safe option for me. I
Mm.
understood math and science fairly well, but to go out and do something else was like, man, I don't know if I could be successful. So I'm not going to touch that. I don't know if I could speak my faith and how people are going to respond to that. So I'm just going to stay away from it. And I'm just going to try to act like I've got it together. So when I began living from that place, Deuteronomy 4:29, God says, seek me with all your heart, all your soul, and there you'll find me. So I just decided, you know what, God, I don't know how this plays out, but with everything I have, I'm going to surrender my life to you and trust that you can move and guide me. And you be the one that determines what success looks like. And in that place, a year later, that's when Ninja Warrior, the TV show, knocked on my door, figuratively speaking, because I saw it on TV and something stirred in my heart. Like
Mm.
I would like to go for that. That seems scary, but also a lot of excitement, challenge, and impact. And John Eldredge wrote a book that I'm sure most of your community knows about, and the Wild at Heart
Yep.
book, and many afterwards. And I read in there, he said, every man needs an adventure to live, a battle to fight, and a beauty to rescue.
Mm.
And I realized I'm complacent in so many parts of life. I'm not going for a bigger mission. Life is all about me. I'm selfish. But God, if you've given me time, talent, and treasure, how do I use that for a bigger purpose?
Mm.
And even though it didn't fit in the religious paradigm, for me, it looked like stepping into that arena with a high likelihood of public failure or rejection. and began to walk that path. And so I did that, and I experienced failure after I experienced rejection. And then the next year I applied again and I experienced rejection and then failure. And it shook me a bit because those were my prior identity pieces. I would never touch something unless I already had certainty it was going to work out. But in that place, man, God did something beautiful in my own heart. And as I persevered and continued to say, well, how do I make an adjustment here? God began to open doors, and then fruit happened from those places. And then it opened up a whole new pathway that I'd never foreseen. And that was bringing me back towards a place of ministry that I'd run from. And it was primarily as a communicator, which I hated. I was more introverted. I was terrible in English and writing and communication. I became an engineer so I could just do math and not communicate with people. And suddenly now I have a platform. I've been on TV. I'm doing interviews, and I would get asked to go speak at a men's group, or a youth pastor would say, come speak to my youth group. And I'm like, bro, that's not my realm. It's not where I want to be. I pray about it. And God said, you told me you'd surrender to wherever I opened the door for. And I'm like, okay. So fast forward 5 and 10 years, and now I'm operating in those places of ministry, of impact, of communication, which I've learned a long time ago. God, I don't want to be speaking from my own confidence and experience, devoid of what the Holy Spirit is doing in me in my own quiet time or what he's saying. I don't want to do that for likes. I want to be a bold man of truth, but not one seek create artificial controversy so that I can generate traction around my name. I know some people believe no press or any press is good press, and there's nuances to that. But all to say, the change in identity led me to take risk. And so I saw myself trying things that were like, I don't know if this is going to work out. And oftentimes it didn't. And then I applied the scriptural term of don't grow weary in doing good, for in due season, if you don't give up, you'll reap a harvest. So now I've seen the harvest come in different ways. And now 10 years into that journey, I've got a trophy over here and I've got some achievements. And really, I would just say those are monuments for me of my time, first in the surrender with the Lord, and then walking the path, and then the wilderness and the trials. But then eventually fruit comes from it that gives me reminders that God is working when I'm willing to continue to surrender. So my place as I step into fatherhood is this motto I've developed. I believe that there are no limits to what God can do with someone's life when they fully surrender it to him and then detach themselves from the result. So as I step into new places, I can have fear of like, man, how's it going to work out with my wife or my kids? How are these different decisions I make going to impact them? Well, one, they're my job to steward, but it's not my job to control those results. So if I want to make them look really impressive, then I can begin to inflict and imprint certain things that may hurt their hearts, but might make them look on the outside like they're impressive, strong Christians. And so as I grew up in the church living that life, I want to make sure that I love, steward, and challenge their life, but from a healthy place of, hey, you become whoever God is going to show you what your call is for my son and for my daughter and for any future kids, and not what I want to impress upon you other than be one of character. We're going to work hard. We're going to rest well. We're going to work hard and play hard. And we're going to love people the way that Jesus showed us what love looks like.
Man,
So a lot in there, but ultimately it's that identity shift, the ability to take risk. And then when a failure happens, what do we do with the failure? We redefine it into a learning.
Yeah.
And I'm still how to do that as I preach about it.
Yeah, no, it's good. So a couple things. I love the steward versus control. I definitely think that's something as men and fathers that we could really wrestle with. And in some level, you answered this question I was going to ask, but I'm just going to throw the question out because I think some men who grew up in the church still wrestle with this. And maybe you can just kind of answer it. But you had 2 times that you shared in 2 different years, right? That you went out for American Ninja Warrior and it was a fail, and then it was a fail. As far as like what we'd call a fail, right? I think sometimes we default to like the Lord's shutting the door or God shutting the door if things don't work out as quickly. But then also sometimes you see somebody who's pursuing something that it's like clearly not the thing. And I don't know if I believe this or not, but the book Strengths Finder, for example, there's like an assessment strength finder, and the book starts off with the story of Rudy and this story we celebrate of Rudy, giving his whole life to football and then playing for like 2 seconds. And basically its point was he wasn't playing to his strengths. Like he should never have been doing that. It was a waste. So you could, people could take that story how they want. But question to you, because you've been through this, how in the moment when you go, okay, God, you're shutting the door, I'm going to move on, or I'm going to try this for 30 years and it never works out and it was like a waste. Where do you find that like rest in God to learn and keep going and know that it's the right thing to keep going in? And I hate saying the right thing, because that's kind of like, I don't know. Anyways, your thoughts.
That's good, Ned. I'm with you on, we need a better word for the right thing. And it's kind of like marriage. I don't believe there is the one soulmate for us. There is the right type of woman. For me, it was a woman surrendered to God with fruit in her life, that she had a deep relationship with him, that was willing to work on emotional issues. Attractive, yes, I want those things. But there's not this soulmate concept of there's only one. And if I mess this up, then the rest of my life is ruined. The same for what we do. I believe God changes the assignments that we do as we walk the path of stewarding our life and what he's given us. So I can say I've lived both of these. Presently, I'm inside of a 4-year real estate project that everything has gone to hell and back with what we're doing. I dumped a lot of my money into this. This was supposed to be something my dad and I would do to generate revenue for the ministry realms we were going to operate in. And it just became something that has been resistance around every corner. 18-month project turned into 4 years. We're now finally have it listed and hoping to exit and salvage something. I say that to say we stepped into that with faith and a level of conviction that God was in this. Now, I'll back up 12 years ago, 2014, when I entered into the Ninja Warrior space. I saw it, felt the desire, conviction, interest. It broke the religious paradigm, because for where I grew up, you're just supposed to be in ministry. So if you do anything outside of that, you're not seeking the Lord or following him. So I disregarded a lot of advice I was given, and I stepped into that journey. Applied, got rejected, eventually did a walk-on process. Some would call it successful because I got on the show, but ultimately for me, it was a failure, where I didn't reach what I thought I was capable of. And so every year I was stepping back in and I would make progress, but then ultimately not achieve what I thought was a realistic goal. And what I begin to wrestle with is, God, are you closing this door? Like, things aren't opening. I'm applying. I'm not getting accepted. Other people are. When I finally got accepted, I did well, but I didn't do as far as I had the potential to. And it just seemed like strange things would happen. I'd make it to the national finals and I'd break my ankle. And next year, I'd make it to the finals and I'd rip my shoulder out of socket, like year over year. And so every year, what I would do is I'd sit back and reflect and say, God, it seems like there's a lot of resistance in here and things aren't working out. Like, doors haven't really opened. Do I need to change direction? Or have I not given it my all? And when you don't know, when I'm asking these God questions, I don't always get clarity. Sometimes in my quiet time, my journal time, I feel like I get a revelation. I get that internal conviction. And for me in that journey, I felt the conviction, don't give up. You're not done. And can I make an adjustment? Because what happens, and you said it earlier, we bump up against something, it doesn't work out, and we just say, it didn't work, on to the next thing. So what I've learned to do in that place is just reflect. Okay, I reflect back over the last year, the season, if it was business, if it was ministry, marriage, athletics, is something not working because I'm doing it the wrong way? Or has God closed the door and he hasn't given me even permission to step in that? And it's my internal flesh wanting to achieve and be significant in some way that God hasn't opened. So I wrestled with that. And I saw places where he was refining me in that. But ultimately, in those seasons, I would reflect back and have a sense that it's not time to quit. And I'll walk away when I know that I laid everything on the line, when I left it all on the field. And then if it didn't work out, okay, I'm at peace. But if I went for it and then I look back and go, I watched the film of my life in that season and go, I didn't really give it my all. I held back. And now if I walk away, I'm going to look back in 10 years with a lot of regrets. And I would much rather live with failure then I would rather live with regret.
That's good.
Failure is weighed in ounces, but regret is measured in tons. Regret's a heavy burden. And I speak that more towards, I wish I had done this thing or tried to do this thing, not so much the regret of past mistakes. So in those places, I would wrestle with it year over year and then feel the conviction. You know what? There's this phrase I heard: champions make adjustments, not excuses. And so here's the reflection for all of us. If we reflect over a season that didn't work out, am I making a lot of excuses about why that didn't work out? If I am, then maybe there's just some places where, with awareness and curiosity, not shame, that I can take on a way to go, I can make some adjustments. I've got the champion mentality. Christ Jesus, who overcame death, hell, and the grave, lives inside of us. We have his spirit. We are overcomers. And so if I apply that, and then all the mess ups that I've seen in the process, Romans 8:28 applies. For God works all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Okay, God, well, this thing hasn't worked out. I don't feel peace to walk away because I know I haven't laid it all on the line. And there's wisdom in that, right? So if you're gambling and you gamble 20 grand and it doesn't work out, you don't go, well, let me just liquidate my savings and pour everything I've got in there. Right. There's some wisdom in this. But in this path of pursuit, I was wrestling with those questions, and I would get the sense every year, I'm not done. I haven't given it everything. There's still adjustments to be made. And I would make those adjustments, and then I would see progress. Now, sometimes a freak thing would happen and another injury. Like, well, I can't control all that. So long story short, I stayed faithful in the journey, and 6 years in was when the real breakthrough finally happened. Not only on the athletic side and the acceptance to the show, but then when I got on and through, I had numerous obstacles pop up in that season. And I was like, I'm not going to read these as God being against me. I'm just going to keep moving. And so through sickness, through injury, I ended up having one of the greatest runs on Ninja Warrior. That's kind of voted on by the fans, and made it to the end and then didn't win. So I didn't walk away with the $1 million prize, although I had left my career at ExxonMobil in that process. Not to like make space to win the TV show, but just to step into the next season I felt God calling me to. So I walk away from an epic win, and yet it wasn't the ultimate win on that show. So I didn't have a lot to show for it. When the feature aired of one of my runs, I had massive food poisoning, and then I beat the second to last run in the finals. And he got featured. Nate's really sick. He's had some injuries, and somehow he persevered. And I got to testify to that. Like, man, God put his hand on me in that place, even though I was willing and prayed before I started. God, in my upcoming failure, I was pretty sure I was going to fail pretty quickly. You still be glorified. That's my heart.
That's awesome.
And then I made it through. And what they featured was the adversity. And ultimately what it played out biblically is, when I am weak, he is strong. And he took that, God took that feature, where I was told later by producers that if I didn't have that sickness, if I hadn't been in the ambulance leading up to the run, if that didn't happen and I had just beat this thing like I was capable of, I probably would not even been shown on TV for that run.
Wow.
Because a lot of the athletes that get on don't get shown on TV, regardless of their performance, because Ninja Warrior is looking for, out of the hundreds of athletes, they're going to feature a few of those runs, and they want to play up storylines.
Yep.
So the sickness, the injury, the setback, all created this unique story. That was the reason shown. And I got featured in a big way from that, even though I didn't ultimately win the show. It opened up the door for the next TV show I'd never heard of in Latin America, where I had suddenly found out that my last 6 years had prepared me for this. And it opened the door with those executives on Telemundo, where they said, this guy, he's been in other cultures. He's willing to learn other languages. He's endured hardship overseas. As an athlete, he's gone through hard things. We have a really challenging TV show that blends Ninja Warrior with Survivor, and he's a great fit. So we're going to invite him in. I get on that TV show and I spend 6 months completely off the grid. No phone, no TV, no internet, no family. And we grind every day as an athlete. And at night, we endure Survivor-style challenges. We're sleeping in a little shack in the woods.
Gnarly.
Public. Tarantulas crawling around, no air condition. I was miserable. And everything I endured and experienced, the physical lust battle with teammates that, some teammates are shacking up off camera on the scenes. Some of them are married, some weren't. I'm a single guy living my life with conviction, and I'm getting mocked for it from my teammates and competitors. And I'm experiencing injury, delay, setback. And by the end of it, through it all, I end up walking away as the champion. I
Wow.
win a pretty cool 200 grand prize. I'd won several SUVs. And the beautiful part about it was I was against pro Olympic athletes, World Cup soccer players. All of them were much more high profile and better than me, arguably. And all of them said, man, Nate, that was such a God thing. Like, we mocked you for the ways that you lived your life behind the scenes, and yet we can't deny what God did in it.
All right, my friends, you've been hearing me talk about the Genesis program through Rise of Kings, and I am incredibly excited to invite you to it as well as be a part of it. Rise of Kings has helped thousands of men over the last 5 years discover the reality of their identity, and now they have launched the Genesis program, which is for young men ages 13 to 17. And here's the idea. You as a father would take your son to this 2-day event to start to initiate a conversation and an awareness around what it means to be a man. But the conversation would really be between you and your son. And then after the 2-day event, once we expose your sons to the 4 pillars, to what it means to be a man, then we work with you and your son. I'm actually the coach for the mastermind program. You got Mondo Davis, who does the 2-day event, incredible man, 11 children. He's currently working with his 16-year-old son. I'm working with my 16-year-old son. So you guys, this is fresh, this is real, this matters. So we want to invite you to the 2-day event with you and your son. And then after that, I'll be the coach for the 6-month mastermind, where I'm working with you every 2 weeks. And then I'm working with your sons every 2 weeks, with the idea that we're helping you to really step into what does it look like to help transition your son from a boy into a man. This is something you won't want to miss. It is worth the time, the resources to really help your son see who he is young and early, so that he can love, lead, serve a family and the kingdom moving forward at a young age. Please go to riseofkings.com/FFN to register. You and your son would love to see you in the program.
And so I just been about the process of, God, I'm going to give my best. I'm going to live right between you and I and love others and serve them. And then you take care of the results. And I didn't see the results play out in my favor for the 6 years, ultimately 7 years on Ninja Warrior. But then it all came together where it wasn't easy. But when God brought about the victory, only he could take credit. And that's the whole thing for those of you men that are listening and you're wrestling with, do I stay faithful in this thing? Okay, well, let's take it to the Bible. If it's your marriage, you fight to the bitter end to stay faithful in that thing. And then you can't control what she does, but you love, serve unconditionally. And I can say that from theory, right? Because I haven't lived that, but I've seen it play out. Now in something else, in business, okay, at times you make a realistic adjustment. Maybe this isn't the thing that's going to work. I don't want to keep trying on something endlessly and dumping money when I have responsibility to take care of my family. So the risk I took was as a single guy, where I had much less risk to a family. So you have to moderate that based on what you feel God calling you to do and then your circumstance. But ultimately he knows that, and he's leading us in a place of adventure to live. There's going to be a battle. And so if you wake up with a little bit of like, dude, today matters. I got stuff on my plate. It's stressful. Hey, stress, I believe stress is neither good nor bad. It's something you just say, man, this battle matters. And I'm in it. So I'm going to keep fighting. And in that place, stress activates you. I've performed my best on some of the highest stages with high pressure. And I've performed my worst when there was low stakes and I got complacent. Just like King David, sitting back in his kingdom. He's like, hey, I think it's retirement mode right now, as it was in the time when kings went out to battle. And he's like, I've accomplished, I've fought, I've done that. A friend of mine here in Dallas, Texas, he leads our men's ministry. He's a former Navy SEAL, and he talks about what he experienced and achieved in the Navy SEALs, BUDS training, everything else. He said when they leave, the other graduates / alumni, those who have retired from the SEALs, they say, remember, his name's Garrett Unkelbach. So Garrett, remember, you have to earn that trident you got every day. Now, it doesn't mean we have to grind endlessly every day, but it's a reminder for all of us, hey, just because we achieved or saw something or did something hard in the past doesn't mean we're now exempt from it in the future. There will be other through hard seasons, and we'll just keep showing up and keep being faithful and keep sowing seeds and keep letting God water them and then looking for where the harvest is, where there's
Mm,
fruit, making the adjustment. Maybe I need to pivot on what I'm doing. I'm in 5 years of ministry and I've pivoted a few times. God, are
yeah,
you in this? Do I be faithful here? Do I make an adjustment? It is a tension in a wrestling that I think ultimately only comes from wise counsel, time in the word, time with the Holy Spirit. So
for
there's
sure.
no formula. I hate it because I'm an engineer. Give me
Yeah.
the formula. And
Yeah,
yet
but
we
that'd
don't.
be there's no formula in relationship, right? So God doesn't set up a formula. He's going to do one thing one time one way and then another time another way because
Uh-huh.
he just wants you in conversation with him. Um, Shifting gears a little bit not that, I mean, we've been talking about fatherhood, but you're a new dad, right? You got twins, 10 months old, boy and a girl, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, bro. So I got twins. They're 16 now, a boy and a girl. And man, they are connected. They're homies. It's cool. I love it. Um, how do you sense your priorities shifting? So two-part question. One, how do you sense your priorities shifting? And two, what's your conviction? I love how you said a minute ago, to live a life with conviction. What is your conviction around fatherhood? You said you wanted to be a dad since you were a teenager, 20s. But what is it? What is the role of the father? And then how have your priorities shifted or are shifting?
Yeah. Well, priorities have absolutely had to shift. And the way that that's shown up is I I refuse to go out and grind in this season where I'm putting myself on the road constantly and
Mm-hmm.
putting a heavier burden on my wife. And so we've decided because of the priority shift that even if it hurts us financially, we're going to be a little bit more, I wouldn't say bare bones, but I'm not going to go out and build in this season. I'm going to maintain in some spaces where I can be more present to help her,
Mm,
my wife, get more established in this new role as a mother. And then building the place where we also take them into the challenge or the adventure. So almost every event I've done that was within driving range, I've brought them with us.
love
I've
it.
left a day earlier or 2 days earlier. I've gone through the hard thing of bringing them on the road, which has been challenging with newborns and infants, and now they're crawling like crazy.
So
But
fun.
doing so keeps her involved in where we go. So we went to a Rise Up Kings event in Denver, Colorado 3 weekends ago. I've brought, I think we've driven 20,000 miles with them now. Arkansas, Tennessee, Florida, Colorado, New Mexico. I say that to say, if I want to focus on the ease of how I go out and do something, I leave on my own. I fly there. I
Mm-hmm,
handle the
mm-hmm,
thing
mm-hmm.
we're doing. I come back. But to bring them along on the journey has been a reshift in priority where it's not easier on me. And vision towards the father I want to be is one where I involve my wife and my children in whatever I'm doing so that I can teach and equip them along the way,
Mm-hmm.
even though it costs me more time, money, and maybe some stress. Because I've
Mm-hmm.
seen the fruit of that in men who I respect them as a husband and father and who have raised incredible children into adults. They said, take the time to bring them along with you in whatever you're doing in work and ministry, and don't go do the thing and then come back to them. Now there's need for that in plenty of
Sometimes,
places,
yeah. Yeah.
but I've just been willing to take the hit financially, with time, with it's just uncomfortable. When we flew him to Montana for an event we did, it wasn't easy to bring the kids along, and yet it unlocks incredible memories, and it's kind of training them to kind of be in that process. So in
Mm-hmm.
7 years from now, when they're 7 and I'm doing that, they're just used to it. Hey, we're gonna go with dad on this thing. And I'll keep creating that space in my calendar where maybe it means I can do less events, I can have less impact, I can generate less finances. But so it is with the principle of tithing and the principle of honoring the Sabbath day, which is
Yeah.
honoring the rest of the day that God created for us. Because God can do more with 6 days than I can do with seven. And God can do more with the 80 or 90% that I give back to Him than I can do keeping 100% of it.
Yeah.
And so I have
Yeah.
to live that out in concept and theory. And then when I see the fruit of it, because of the wisdom of other people, like, all right, that's the decision that I'm making and that my wife and I are making as we grow in parenting, even though it will cost us productivity, efficiency, which I'm as an engineer, that's my language. I want to operate smoothly.
Right.
So
Right.
so you can expect some of that philosophy that I'm implementing now, and it's reshifted the priority of how I've been able to operate in prior seasons as a single man. It's easy to travel, one backpack, boom, I've been around the world, 35 countries, 100 different times. And whether it's work, ministry, sports, it wasn't easy, but I made the most of that season. Now I'm in a
Right.
new one. So I'm making the most of this season. I just enjoy a Friday night, Saturday night, sitting on the couch with him. And I've redefined, some of it just was natural, but I've also redefined what enjoying my free time looks like. Just
Hmm.
enjoying being with him.
Yeah, man. And so one, kudos to you for making that adjustment now, right? Because even if they're like 10 months or a year and a half or 3, easy to go, I'm going to start taking them on the road when they're 10. So
Exactly.
kudos to you that you're doing that now. You're creating that now, and kudos to your wife. She's got to be pretty rad lady to be
Yeah,
willing
she's
to do
awesome.
that, because that's, twins is no joke, and then it's your first time being parents, so it's like you're like figuring all this crap out, which is, it's just its own struggle and beauty, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I've been doing that more. I've had more of that realization in the last 5 years. I don't know if you heard my talk at the Rise Up Kings conference, but like I brought my 16-year-old son on stage with me at the end of my talk, right?
Mhm.
So like he's very involved with me because I'm homeschooling him now. Like I have one boy and 4 girls, and when he turned 16, I had this like spiritual awakening moment of like, I'm responsible to make sure this kid knows how to hear God's voice, love a woman, and lead. And so I
Yeah.
pulled him out of school, homeschooling him, which is its own like interesting wrestle uh dynamic between the two of us, but it's created some cool moments where he's traveling with me a lot more and we're doing life together, which just feels right. So what I would say is like some positive feedback to you is, as having young kids, is the foundation you're building for the kingdom right now by investing the time with your kids is going to have impact 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 years from now. Because I think as kings, you and I, fathers, it's not just about the impact we have today, but am I preparing our sons and daughters to have impact when they're 40 or when we're not here anymore? And the only way
Yeah.
we do that, like the only way the kingdom of God continues, is if it's passed from family to family. It's the only way. And the only place that's learned is in the home. Like we can go do all this cool stuff. But at the end of the day, if it's not being translated into men and women, husbands and wives, moms and dads, leading that in their home, then none of it matters. Church on Sunday, missionary, speaking in front of thousands, none of that matters if it's not being translated into like the day in, day out living inside of a home. That's how the kingdom of God continues on. That's how it flourishes. God wants to
Mhm.
transform through families. That's how the real work is done. So the fact that you're doing that, I think, bro, is probably the real work you're doing, right? Like you get on stage and it wasn't even about that hour of talk you gave. It was about all the logistics of you being with your wife and kids doing that whole thing. Dude,
Yeah.
it's beautiful and exciting. It's super cool. It's super cool.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. I think at the end of our life, I mean, as I read testimonials of people on their deathbed, men primarily, you say, what are your biggest regrets? And they'll say,
Yeah.
I wish I had worked less and spent more time with my family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater
Of
and
course.
think that we're not called to have an impact on this world. But if our primary focus has to be wife and kids, then all right, I would rather default more towards, I made a little bit less money than I could have, and I put too much time there. All right, but if the opposite of that is I made more than enough money and I just gave that away, because once you hit a certain amount, your lifestyle doesn't really change unless you're just
Right.
buying stupid things. You're just giving more towards other places. And yet, if you're neglecting your own home life and the way that you love and steward the ones that want to be around you,
Yeah,
they're not
exactly.
not being forced to go there in youth camp or whatever it is. Then that's going to be the greatest return you could have. So I love that you one help encourage me in that place, because it's a philosophy right now. Like, all right, I'm gonna do this.
You're
And I
doing
don't
it,
know.
dude. Yeah.
Like marriage, people ask me for marriage advice. I say, get back to me in 5 or 10 years. I
Yeah.
I've got plenty of philosophy. I've got
Right.
experience watching others, but I haven't lived it yet. And if I'm not living it yet, I'm not going to preach it to you.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's funny. It's like I think often about, someday giving an account of my life to Jesus, to God, whatever that looks like. And I can't imagine him being like, dude, you spent too much time with your kids or you spent too much time with your wife. Like, yeah, that's not going to be part of the conversation. Um, all right, my friend, last question for you. And as a man of faith, we've heard this come out already, but I just want to ask it specifically. Imagine your kids are 18, 19, 20 years old, right? And they're in this season where they're transitioning from depending on you the way that they are as children, as young, like high school. And they're going to be transitioning to hopefully having deep connection and relationship with you. But what are the two or three things that you want them walking into their, family, their life that they're going to be establishing? What are the two or three things that are really going to be important to you when you're at their graduation or you're at their wedding, that you're just going to like sit back and have that feeling, not of regret, but of accomplishment? Like, dang, I got to be a part of this and I stewarded it well. What are those two or three things you want them to know?
That's a deep question. I would think primarily when they reach that age, let's say 18 to 20, I want them to have experienced some form of a rite of passage
Hmm.
where they, from the people that they love and respect, have essentially commissioned them and said, "You have been prepared and you've passed a test and you're ready." And so for my son and maybe other future sons, that will be an event and something that I put together. It may be participation in something that exists, or I build it out in a way that my son, from how I've been preparing him up to that point, goes through a very challenging rite of passage where he feels and knows in his own spirit that he's got what it takes. Because I can only prepare him for so much and I can only predict so much of what's coming. So I want him, and this is going to be the same for my daughter in a different way that we do that, but that they know they can hear the voice of the Lord, as you said, that they've got character and foundation, that when they get tested, they know they can persevere, and that they know this concept of a righteous man or woman can stumble 7 times but get back up 8.
Mm, mm,
Never do I wanna create a space where, because I'm in ministry, impact, living for the Lord, hopefully relatively sin-free, I don't wanna set a standard that they think this is what it looks like to follow the Lord, and they have to live up to my expectations. I want them to be free to
mm,
step and move where God guides them and make mistakes along the way that doesn't let the enemy disqualify them. But they go, "You know what? Dad's always been very humble on his journey. When he's made a mistake, he's owned it, he's apologized, he's corrected it between he and I, and he's shown me how God does the same thing for him. And so I know God can do that in my life." So I want them to leave being equipped. So, a rite of passage is kind of a crescendo of a lot of base things that we
yes.
build in on the way so that they're capable, equipped, confident in a healthy way, but ultimately know they can make a mistake and dad's not going to say, you've blown it, you're a failure. And I know in the heart of most of us as fathers, we don't we don't see ourselves with anger towards our kids. But if I haven't done the work in myself, if I'm unhealed, then I'm gonna subconsciously project a lot of frustration on my kids
Right.
of how
Right.
they're supposed to look and appear. Even if I don't tell them they've got to go be an athlete at a certain level or they have to be in ministry, it doesn't matter what I may or may not define. But if I haven't come to peace with myself,
Hmm.
those emotions will bubble over and then create a gap between my kids and I.
Yeah.
And so I want to graduate them from me being their father into me being their friend.
Hmm.
And I think and I think a metric of that would be, are they ready to be married by the time they're 20 years old in our current day? Because right now, most people are getting married in their late 20s into their 30s. And I think despite all the nuances of our world, I think it's delayed. I think society has delayed the
Yeah.
development of young men and
Yeah.
young women. They've lowered the standard, and I think a healthy individual that's been fathered well has the likely potential to be set up and successful to enter into marriage if the time comes at 20, 21.
Yeah.
If they don't, that's fine. I mean, hopefully it's fine because I got married when I was 38. But in that place, having that imprint of, hey, the season has changed. You are now a young man, you are now a young woman, and you have that internal conviction. You've got what it takes. You hear from the Lord. You can move forward. It's okay if you haven't figured it out yet. Keep seeking, keep pursuing. I'm going to be your friend. I'll be a
Mm,
guide. but while you're still my child, you're not my responsibility in the same way.
Yeah.
So you have a measure of responsibility for your life, and you make decisions that are going to affect it. And that's going to be the hard part as a dad to release some measure of control and stewardship, and then let them inevitably learn forward. And that probably comes with some mistakes. And hopefully I'm the one that they run to in the mistake. Like, Dad, I messed up.
You've earned that trust with them.
Not the, oh crap, I messed up, I got to hide this from Dad.
Right.
That would break my heart if make a mistake that they have to hide this from me. I think it means I've done a poor job of keeping the relationship the priority over just the discipline or the expectation.
Yeah.
That makes
No, I mean, I think that is the relationship God wants with us, right? And so as fathers, it's such a big responsibility that we have to be the ones to show that to our kids. Because if we make them feel like they have to hide their mistakes, then they're going to want to do that same thing with God. They're going to feel shame. They're going to feel guilt. They're going to feel like they don't belong. So it's like, dude, it's a big responsibility that we are really given the opportunity by God to reveal to our young children in middle school, high school, that we're basically getting to play this role of teaching them what a good father is like. And good is relative in the sense that they're going to realize, and we know we're not God. We're going to mess it up. And that's why it's easier to make that transition of, I'm not God to you. You're going to see me that maybe at 2 or 3, but I'm going to transition your understanding and point you in the direction of like the voice that you need to be truly dependent on. So it's cool, man. I think that's like the number one thing as dads. And I would love for more dads to get that, because I think we would have a healthier overall family society, if we just put a little bit less pressure on ourselves, partnered with God, and got to play a role in this whole family thing.
Yeah,
Nate,
good.
Dude, much love to you, bro. Like, thank you for your time. Thank you for the manual. Thank you for continuing to like not put limits on your life and encourage other men to do the same, right? To live in relationship and take risk and have fun with this thing we have in front of us called life. So, dude, blessings to you, your marriage, your kids, your future kids, your ministry, your work, your home, business, all of it, dude. Thank you for being a part of the advancement of the kingdom here and now, dude. How freaking fun is this? So, dude, I hope our paths cross again in the future. Keep being yourself. And just much love to you and your family. Until next time.
Amen. Thank you, Ned.
All right, brother. Peace. What a great conversation. I love talking to Nate. I love learning about his story. I love the wrestle, the tension, the way to be out in the world and living a dream, and having opportunities even in the struggle to really have impact and love those around you. 2 things that are probably just going to stick with me is this. He made this comment, live a life of conviction. And I've never said that. I've never thought that, but that is really a core value of mine. I feel like I live my life with conviction. And sometimes I think it may come across to my family or to others as like idealistic or high expectations. But there is this conviction that I'm a part of something bigger than myself, and it excites me, and I want to be a part of that. The other thing he said that I'm going to be sharing with my kids is this: champions make adjustments, losers make excuses. I love that. Like, I'm going to make adjustments as I learn and grow versus making excuses for myself or for others. All right, my friends, if this was helpful, you enjoyed it, the best compliment you can give me is sending a text to a friend saying, hey, check out this podcast. I think you'd enjoy it. The second best thing you could do is write a review, help spread the word that fatherhood matters on whatever podcast platform that you listen to this on. Please just click the stars, write a review. I'd be greatly appreciative. Thank you to all you dads out there listening to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself. That's who your kids, your spouse, and your community needs. This is your guide, Ned Schaut. Together, let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact, and let's create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. I look forward to hanging out with you next week.